Hey everybody, David Cooper here. Got John Haldi with me. We were just chatting earlier today, and a lot of people are reaching out to us saying, "What's going on in the world? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What's up with freight?" So, thought nothing better for us to do than hop on the camera, get in front of you, and let you know what we're hearing. So, John, without further ado, what are you hearing these days?
Well, not what we expected to hear. Certainly coming out of Orlando, the FedEx Forward Summit, they had said, I heard through the grapevine that they had said that peak was going to be relatively flat compared to last year. But we all expected the volume to pick up. Nobody's really feeling peak volumes yet. But there's some weird things that are going on in the network. People are referring to it as a network reset. It's clear to me, my own interpretation, of course, but from what I'm hearing anecdotally, FedEx is rearranging some things. And it's probably in part due to external factors and in part due to internal factors. So I think it's worth kind of talking about the stories we're hearing and our interpretation of it. Is that good by you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
So I like to follow the analyst reports from Wall Street as a starting point, and UPS just announced their quarterly results. They're feeling a lot of headwinds in the freight market, and what was mentioned in their call was that freight is softer than they expected for right now. And I would have to assume that FedEx is feeling similar. I mean, they operate in the same world. You could point to a lot of economic factors. Consumers appear to be kind of tapped out if you look at the credit card numbers. Student loan payments kicked in. The employment figures indicate that the employment side of things is not great. We know interest rates are way up. So that's probably pinching people in different ways. So overall, I think that there are economic headwinds that none of us can avoid, right? That said, in the transportation sector, we know that the spot market is way, way, way down. They're at a cyclical low. Intermodal is down. Prices are lower in the intermodal space. Availability is much higher than it was during COVID. So for rail, that's an option that transportation providers can take advantage of for cold trailers and other sorts of things. I have heard interesting one-off stories here and there of assigned runs getting pulled. And that's, of course, a terrifying thing to hear in the ground network for TSPs. They all seem to fall into the same pattern right now of assigned runs that were consistently full freight in one direction and empties coming back. Sitting here, if I had to guess from stories I've heard, FedEx may be looking at that and looking at the spot rates in the rail market and saying, you know what, it's cheaper for us in some cases to have purchase power take that one way and then bring back the trailers as needed on rail. So that could be part of the story. I mean, they obviously have a bigger picture of it, but if it's a case where the trailers are being piled up somewhere and they have to get back to where they're needed, rail's always an option because those aren't, high deadline type trailers. Do I think FedEx would do that en masse? No, because I think it sends shockwaves through the contractor world. But Wall Street's breathing down their neck. It wouldn't surprise me that where they can find real economy, they might be realigning their board to take advantage of these different options they might not have had during COVID.
Well, and you also have to consider that the lower freight markets play into that, right? If they had a trailer volume that could handle maximum capacities or capacities that we were running in, 22, 21, those eras, and now they have excess trailers, they can allow those trailers to sit empty. They can take their time, put them into the rail yards, move them back in a much slower manner, much cheaper manner than moving them empty. So I completely agree with you. It makes a lot of sense.
I've also heard stories that the spares are kind of getting pruned from the system.
Yep.
You hear, depending on the geographic market, you hear stories about unassigned runs not getting nearly as many turns and as many miles as they got in the past. I've heard stories too that teams, when they leave their home domicile and they get where they're going, there's no option to keep going somewhere else. They've got to be sent back to their home domicile. When you think about what FedEx has talked about publicly with their Network 2.0 and their long-term plans to integrate express and freight and to leverage the TSP side of things, it would appear that the express integration, which was started first in some test markets, that has gone slower than they might have liked, or maybe it's as expected. I can't tell you what they're thinking, but I'm sure that there's a lot of complexity there. I would expect that that's still going to keep moving forward, but it's not happening right now. Maybe by design, maybe they didn't want to push that into peak because they wanted to be prepared for peak and they didn't need that extra headache, if you will, or the extra capacity on the ground side. So if I was the guy tasked at FedEx with thinking through how to do all those integrations, it's obviously sort of a centralized function to think through that and realign the board to make those things happen. And I think that during COVID, when it was, balls to the wall, get everything moving any way you can, there was a lot of decentralization and a lot of decisions being made in terms of adding unassigned runs and using spares at the terminal level, at the hub level. I have a feeling that they're kind of trying to pull that back and get a little more control over what's going on in the network. So in that light, it makes sense to me, some of the stories that I'm hearing. I have no insight. No one at FedEx talks to me, but just looking from the outside in and hearing the different stories, that feels like what's happening to me, that there's an attempt to sort of realign the board and have control of it from Pittsburgh.
I would hate to make any assumptions there because what I can say is I've talked with several contractors running teams in several different markets, and nobody has heard the exact same thing. So I haven't heard the same story twice from any two contractors. I don't know if I know enough right now to speak on it. So it's an interesting. We need to keep up to it. You need to know what's going on with your teams and keep up to date with how to maximize your miles for your teams. But it's up in the air right now as to what the real story is.
And there's two other factors that I'm sure are causing headaches for corporate right now. You've got the UPS strike, which probably in the short term created a great opportunity for FedEx to steal some business from UPS, as shippers were very concerned about UPS being able to service their needs. But I would have to think, and the stories I've heard make me believe it, that UPS is very aggressively going out there and bidding for that business to get it back, maybe even at cost. They're buying the business back because if they've got excess capacity, that's hurting them. And if I was in the seat of someone at UPS headquarters, I'd be saying, let's get the freight back because we hemorrhage money with excess people and tractors. Even if it's at cost, we need to keep the trucks moving. So that's going on. And I did hear a story, not verified, that at least one very big customer of FedEx jumped over to Brown recently. And when that happens, it creates all kinds of gaps in the network from where they're sourcing it to the delivery. And that changes the freight volumes and the planning and everything else going on in engineering. And they have to react quickly. We could just be feeling those sort of pockets that are getting hit. And then, of course, the other external factor is you've got the UAW strikes for the automakers and all of the freight associated with those parts that were moving or not moving as the assembly lines got shut down, different things happening. I don't know how much of the auto parts market make up FedEx's volume on the ground side, but if there is any material amount, that's been completely hiccuped, and that could be causing a lot of headaches also as FedEx tries to plan their day.
But not only that, you have to consider the UAW strike in a bigger way. That's how many people are out of work that aren't online. The consumer spending that impact alone. I've watched or read numerous reports on that, and it's really truly impact that consumer online spending. The reports in the rural small town America, you can see it. It's sectored out there. Read numerous reports on it.
So, do I have answers? No. Do I think that this is some bellwether that FedEx Ground's in trouble? Not at all. I think that there are economic headwinds. There's various external factors that are causing speed bumps. But generally speaking, I think that the FedEx integration, the Network 2.0, that's going to be, as they eventually roll it out, a big plus for the TSPs. My hope is that they're able to fast track that as much as they're able post peak, so that they can gap fill some of the network volume with stuff coming from express and freight and keep the TSPs running at full tilt. But all of that's a massive lift, and I can only imagine how complicated it is. I'm not an apologist for FedEx. They're not perfect, but they do run a great network. And I would have to say whoever's tasked with that job in Pittsburgh, whatever they're getting paid, they're probably underpaid, because I can only imagine how ridiculously complex that is. So I feel the pain because I talk to contractors all the time. And when these things happen to a contractor, it can be very painful. I mean, if you got 50 trucks and you lose a route, you can make do. If you've got 4 and you lose a route, that's a real crisis. And then, of course, when other people hear about it, it causes people to lose sleep thinking, will it happen to me? And nobody can say, right? I don't feel that FedEx is being capricious in any way. I think they value the network, the strength of the network. It's a crown jewel for them. But they have to run their business the best way they can because they have people they report to. So it's a delicate balancing act. I know that we'd all love it to be crazy COVID volume like we saw in 2021, 22. But the reality is the world out there is shifting here and there, and FedEx is doing the best they can to keep up with it. And the real challenge, I think, for TSPs is to be really profitable. Your business as an AO has to be very consistent and very predictable. And there's a lot of change happening. So that's going to upset a lot of apple carts. So all I can say is, make sure you've got cash to protect yourself in case you hit a speed bump, and run your business as tight as you can right now. And hopefully we come out the other side of this in a better place than we are right now.
Absolutely. I'm in the same position as you. So really appreciate your time. I think what would be really fun for us is to maybe call up some other guys and see if we can get another one of these going and get some more opinions on this. So the more I learn and the more I hear is it's different across the country and in different parts of the network. So I think we can get a good message out by reaching different parts of it.
Yeah, I'd love to do that with you. I know we wanted to do this right now because everyone's talking about it. It's fresh in everyone's mind, and this was a quick way to share our thoughts. But yeah, let's work on that and try to get something out in the next few weeks.
Really do appreciate your time. See y'all, everybody else soon. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, David.